Welcome back, everyone, to another Armored Warfare replay. I'm your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today I have for you maybe 268 in his BMD-4, Sneedy in his Kampfpanzer 70, myself in the M1 Abrams, Blockhouse with his MBT 70, and Bandits and with his Merkava 2C. So we're going to give a little bit more history here about the M1 Abrams. You've already seen the M1A1, which is the tank I served on when I was in the service. You've seen the M1A1 Storm, and now you're going to see the original M1 Abrams and how it would enter and look in its early production years. Doesn't look much different than older models, but you can point out some differences if you really look for them. What we'll go over here is, first off, unlike the M1A1, this is armed with a M68A1 105mm gun versus a Rheinmetall 120mm smoothbore. It still does have a ballistics computer. It still has thermal optics and many other features that you would see in the M1A1s and the M1A2s. However, obviously these are the very early versions of that. Due to the technology, it would actually range at around. It had a high first kill probability at 2,000 meters with a maximum range of around 3,000 meters. It would first, the M1 would actually begin production in 1978, but would not enter service until 1980. It is still powered, just like the older M1 or more newer M1s, by the ATG 1500 horsepower multi-fuel turbine engine. On paved road, it could reach speeds of 45 miles per hour. On cross country, it could reach speeds of up to 30 miles per hour. And without the governor, it could reach speeds of 60 miles per hour on paved road. Now, production would begin in 1978, as I said, at the Chrysler plant. However, it would switch to General Dynamics in 1985, with 3,273 M1 Abrams tanks being constructed. However, the early production models, these are the original production models. The first produced would be designated as XM1, and there would be 110 of them. These were before the type model number being M1, officially designated as such. As an interesting note, I always have a photograph of the real-world vehicle at the end of the video. That real-world vehicle, from what I understand, is actually an XM1. It's an early production XM1, and actually one of the earliest produced XM1s. From what I understand, that vehicle essentially was accepted in the service, stamped as Thunderbolt in the memory of Creighton Abrams, and put on display. It was actually never used in combat. It wasn't even used as a training tank, or so that's what I've been told. You can take that for what you will. Now, more history on the M1 Abrams. M1 Abrams would actually serve in Desert Storm. It was deployed for the first. This is where it'd be deployed for the first time in some type of major action. It'd be this would be the greatest of any American tank test since World War II, and to be considered the fourth largest tank battle of all time. M1 would distinguish itself with a total loss of 23 M1A1 tanks damaged to a great extent. Some fatally, but with no crew casualties. Of 9 destroyed, 7 would be destroyed by friendly fire, on contrast to the 250 enemy tanks that were claimed. Many kills being scored at accesses of 2,500 meters, and some being in very poor visibility. So I mean, the tank has, there's even more history to give still, because obviously it's a tank that's still in service. It does have a rich history. Let's talk about how it is in armored warfare. This is it's a tier 6 main battle tank, and it's the predecessor to the M60s. It's not a bad hull down machine. However, not being hulled down, the lower glacis is a weak point, and there's actually a weak point around the turret ring. All that being said, though, it's not a bad machine. It's got decent aim time. It's fairly accurate. It's got excellent gun depression, and it's a very mobile machine. I mean, once you get this thing spooled up, it will keep up with light tanks. That was just brutal. And that was even more brutal. Now, a couple things I want to point out here. As you can see, comparing this to the M1A1, the blowout panels are very different. It doesn't have some of the cruise stowage that the M1 would feature, the M1A1 features. There's a lot of things that were more or less decided on after the fact, and it would be seen in the M1A1. The sprocket wheel here is different. However, the vehicle did favor cruise survivability very highly. One being featured is the composite armor. Another important feature for cruise survivability is the blowout panel, the blow-off panels, for when the ammunition is hit. And things of that nature. Now, as a little side note here, as I said, this features a 105mm gun. It was actually always intended for Abrams to feature a 120mm gun. However, the thing I want to point out at the time, this is kind of a splitting hairs thing. At the time, America's armed forces wanted to replace M60s. It felt like the M60 was actually getting old and needed a proper replacement versus an upgrade. It was felt that the Soviet vehicles might be surpassing the M60. There we go. Get a little bit of a ram there. Oh, here's an M1A1. However, what would happen is they would do some upgrades. They would do some upgrades, and they would accept the original M1s would be accepted with the 105mm rifled gun. It was an upgraded version of what was in the M60, as pretty much an intermediate solution for just getting this tank into service. At the time, they were waiting for trials to complete on the 120mm Rheinmetall gun. America at one point was even looking at the British rifled 120mm gun, but from what I understand, they wanted to go to a smoothbore gun for velocity reasons, velocity and range. So there we go. There's the end of the match. Let's pull up the results here. So there you go. Almost 14,000 damage done. Got a target medal. 4 enemies spotted, and 11 destroyed. Nothing quite in particularly special, but I would be number 2 in damage on my team. And I figured that was a decent replay to actually show off the original M1 Abrams, the very early production models. But yeah, so there you go. And then here's that photo of Thunderbolt I was talking about. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the replay, and I will see you all again sometime.